My name is Dundrup, and I'm the SPC here at Tupted Norbo Ling, and so I just have the pleasure, the honor of welcoming Ondy back to our, unfortunately, virtual this time, Gompa. We had the extreme good fortune of hosting Ondy in person for a whole month back in 2022, and we look forward to the timing of that working out again in the future. We made an effort, and unfortunately, it's just didn't work out so far. But we're holding out hope for Ondy's return to our physical Gompa. Ondy is one of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche's, early students. She's been a touring teacher for many years, and she's a published author, and that's related to what she's here this week and next week to talk to us about teachings from her latest book, which you can also get yourself and read. So we are really, it's a pleasure to have Ondy back with us, and we look forward to this collaboration continuing for many years.
Well, that's a lovely introduction, Dondra, and I'm really happy to be back in connection with you all, some of whom I recognize and some of whom I don't, but welcome anyway. And I hope you find this interesting and just a little slightly different slant on Buddhism, which you will be used to. Anyway, you'll find it as you go along. So we're going to start with some prayers that we normally start with, and I'll then go straight into a short meditation. And you will notice that I'm sort of rather sexily husky at the moment. That isn't to do with me, it's to do with a cough. Yes, so I hope that my cough doesn't interrupt, certainly the meditation. But as we go on, just recognize that I've got this chesty thing at the moment, which is sometimes interfering with me talking and also being quiet. So anyway, okay. Let's have a look at the prayers and do those together. So we'll do this twice in English. I'm sure you're used to doing this in varied ways. We do like to keep the Tibetan going. It's that sort of intuitive link with our roots, if you like, the source of all our wonderful teachings and our guides. And so we'll finish with one round of chanting. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chedang Soki Chuknam La Changchu Badu Dagni Kepsuchi Dagi Jin Soki Peso Namki Drola Penchi Sangye Druk Pasho. So we'll just start straight away with a little meditation. Just find your posture naturally, feel very natural. Take some deep breaths and start with some gentle mindfulness. Allowing the breath to come and go, along with the thoughts and excitements and disturbances that you may be carrying with you. Just let them rest. The topic for today is really taking a close look, an examination of what we mean by the spiritual path. As Buddhist practitioners, we have engaged with the Buddhist religion. And so we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And sometimes we can forget our inner refuge, our inner Buddha nature, the wisdom and compassion we carry inside. And the best spiritual guide for us being that highly intuitive aspect of ourself. So this is our motivation for the session and for the meditation, is to find our inner refuge. And with Tibetan Buddhism, we have the Guru as such an incredible source of strength on our path, the ultimate spiritual guide. So for the first part of this meditation, I want you to just think about whether you have that connection and what that means to you and how that supports you on your spiritual path. A little bit of analysis and then generate a feeling of unity with your Guru. Now focus on your inner Buddha nature, what that means to you. How do you relate to that concept? Do you carry that awareness with you? That you have this wisdom and compassion within. After a little bit of analysis, again, generate a feeling at your heart of this higher aspect of yourself, your Buddha nature. And now the Dharma. So focus a little on perhaps remembering yourself pre-Dharma, before Dharma. What motivated you, what was going on in your life, and what it felt like to discover the Dharma and how it has become integral in your daily life. And again, feel that at your heart, this incredible recognition of all you carry, all you have learned, and all what that means. Because when we learn something, we hear it, we test it like gold, and we absorb it into ourselves. It's because we are open and know it to be true. So it's like a relationship with what you know already, which again relates to your Buddha nature. We know it to be true. We just need to be reminded. It opens our hearts. So really enjoy that sense of, wow, look what I've got, who I am. And then move to the final source of refuge, the Sangha, your inner Sangha, yourself as a spiritual guide for others, and yourself as a source, a resource for your ego to come to guide you. This is where your self-cherishing and your really strong sense of I can turn to. Releasing the grasping, really being honest. Unite with the feeling, generate yourself finally as Guru, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. It's all there. Everything you need internally. And with that wonderful realization, you can end your meditation. Okay. So I have a little slideshow for you. And then I hope we can have some discussion groups. Let's see how the time goes. Yeah? Okay, Sheila. So can you bring up the slideshow, please? That's great. Okay, so this is the name of my book, Spiritual Rebellion, Mindfulness with Attitude. And I've been working just as a little prologue to the course. I won't spend too much time talking about it, but I've been working in secular environments, the private sector, the public sector, working with all kinds of people, social workers to lawyers, police, lots of public sector people, business people as well. And as time has gone on, it's become easier to introduce mindfulness because, of course, everybody's much more open to the concept. So, so I had some time, sort of COVID time really, where I thought, right, I'm going to get everything I've done into a book, because actually the spiritual path can be practiced by anybody at all. And there are many people who, for various reasons, do not follow a religion nor want to engage in a religion. And I realize that the landscape is a bit perhaps different in America, but certainly in England, I would say that we're more of a secular society, although there's a lot of different religions going on. So for me, this was like, look, whatever we do, whatever we follow, whether we're Christian or Buddhist or Muslim or humanist or we don't, or pagan, whatever we are, actually what's common is our spirituality. And this is a book in which you can say it covers all aspects of the spiritual path. And also, if you are a practicing Buddhist, you can see it's a kind of secular lam rim, really. It's no different. So that was my motive anyway. And I am running a variety of little courses like this, but also longer ones for people who, as I say, I've met in my professional world and who are very interested. They are spiritual beings. They really want to develop that side of them. They still have no interest in following a religious path. Okay, so authenticity in our spiritual practice. What I feel is really useful for, I'm speaking to a largely, I think, Buddhist audience at the moment, is sometimes, we choose religion because it suits us. I love the way this person talks and this community works. And yeah, I don't believe in a God, the creator either. So there's lots of things that draw us into a religious practice. And I can certainly say for myself, when I came sort of screaming and kicking, if you like, to a place to do a retreat, when actually what I really wanted to do was go on holiday to a Greek island. It took me a while. My ego was like really resistant, but then I started to fall in love, if you like, with these amazing beings, Tibetan lamas, and started to recognize what they represented, what they symbolized, and the things that they were talking about was just blowing my mind. So it was really a question of my ego going, wow, you found something you can't ignore now. Yeah. You can't ignore that this external structure, Tibetan Buddhism, the Lam Rim, all these people practicing, all these dedicated practitioners, people running this at that time. It was a crazy center. About 80 people from all over the world, came there. You can't ignore that this external structure is going to help you. And without it, you couldn't do it by yourself. And so this is really what I'm talking about with inner refuge, is we've got that wonderful outer refuge, which enables us to know what our inner refuge is and to practice it. So religions are great, yeah? They really support us. If you're not a Buddhist or a religious practitioner, that's great too, because with guidance, and this is the thing, we all need guidance on a spiritual path. Otherwise, it can get as egotistic as everything else is in life. As we slap it on ourselves and wear whatever is the spiritual look. But we can also do that if we're practicing Buddhists. And with my long experience, and I'm sure many of you have that as well, you will have come across and also experienced within yourself sometimes this sense that you're as attached to your religion as you are to anything else. And that can be unhealthy. So it's having a look at that. And that's really what we're going to focus on today. So one of the questions I ask in my book is, can you be religious and not spiritual? And I think that's a very interesting question to consider, which perhaps can be on the back burner for you. And is it different? Is religion separate to spirituality? Can they work very well together? Or do we have to be aware when we take on a religion of certain obstacles to our spiritual practice? So when you say spiritual rebellion, you can see why it's a little bit rebellious. I didn't mean it like that, actually. I meant it more to be a rebellion against the worldly concerns like hedonism and materialism, to go, I'm a spiritual practitioner and I'm proud of it and I know what that means and I don't want you to laugh at it. And because people can kind of go, flaky hippie spiritual practitioners. No, it's discipline. It's hard work, and we know what we're talking about. So, concept covered in this 2-part course, so we've got next week as well, is spiritual authenticity and using mindful awareness in our everyday lives and using mindfulness for self-awareness. Okay, so let's go on to slide 2. And let me know if there's any problems with this, because I've got my own with some notes so that I make sure I get everything in I'm meant to. This wonderful quotation is from the Dalai Lama. And he's a practicing Buddhist, if ever there was one. And it's taken from Ethics for the New Millennium. And he goes on to say, there is thus no reason why the individual should not develop them, these qualities, even to a high degree, without recourse to any religious or metaphysical belief system. This is why I sometimes say that religion is something we can perhaps do without. What we cannot do without are these basic spiritual qualities. So I'm not asking you to lose your religion, but to strip it back and check if there are any attitudes that you're carrying that are threatening your spiritual path. Anything about your practice that is increasing your attachment and enlarging your ego. So just like when we take a car to a mechanic, it needs to be taken apart before they can find out the problem and then polish up all the bits, put them back again. Buddhism is our vehicle for our spiritual paths. So we want to make sure it's serving us well and we're not getting caught up in prejudices, superstition, anything that's being, thrown at us, and we just have to take it because it's part of the package. You want to make sure, like, Lama Yeshe, all the teachers, he used to say this a lot, test it like gold. If you don't agree, throw it out. Test it like gold. Yeah. I'm not sure we always do that. Yeah. Okay. Let's go on to slide number 3. There's 9 in all, just in case you're wondering. Okay. I like this little joke. So what we're doing in this practice, just like I mentioned in the meditation, is we're managing the ego. And the ego has to be managed, especially if we're saying we're following a religion and it's serving us well. We are role models for others, yeah? So if we are appearing to be thinking that we're special because we're practicing Buddhists and we know something you don't, that's just adding to our ego, isn't it? Yeah? So that ego is huge. It takes up all the space in the room, always. So having that relationship with that ego where we're going, okay, just check up on what you're doing here is so vital. Inner refuge is vital. And we can see, I hope from the meditation and from what you've done before, I'm sure, is that we've got this incredible source, external refuge. We need to bring that in and recognize we've got it within us. The spiritual qualities are within us. And Buddhism is the vehicle to realize those and transform them into wisdom and compassion. Yeah. So it's the vehicle. So if it's not doing it, we've got some obstacles within our religion. So does your religion create barriers between you and others? Has your belief system become part of your ego identity? This is ouchy, scratchy stuff. So we need to do it gently. Take your ego for a walk. Befriend it. Be kind to it. It's just a scared baby. And it wants to become enlightened and it wants to be all these wonderful things. It is wonderful. But you're going to have to manage it. We have to manage it very carefully. Okay, so let's go on to slide number 4. So what the Dalai Lama is saying and what we know from our practice is to develop spiritually. We need to develop our inner world. Yeah. And so it's not unlike the religious path. It appears to be the same. And if you go to any of the other religions, I'll look at Christianity in particular as a comparison, for sure, Jesus's teachings were all about developing these wonderful positive qualities. So in Buddhism, the essence of Buddhist practice is stabilizing the mind and developing constructive qualities and discarding destructive emotions. It's all good. It's all good. So, and positive emotions lead to more and more positive feelings, gentler thoughts, and more positive emotions. It's like you're feeding the 10,000s with 4 loaves and 2 fishes. Is that right? Anyway, the ripples go out. That's the point. That's the point. So contentment, because we rely less and less on materialism and hedonism, yeah, those worldly pursuits. Genuine contentment from within, we recognize it. Fearlessness, because what's to fear? The ego has less to fear. What can anybody take from you? It's just stuff. They can't take away your inner spirituality, whatever situation you're in. And refuge, because you feel a solid sense of support within you. And that gives you self-esteem. Real resilience. You like yourself better. So I hope you were feeling in that meditation this sense of, wow, I'm not bad. I'm quite a good person. I'm doing all right. And that's good to feel that. You know, we carry, through perhaps teachings of church, some sense of guilt. Yeah. And it's really difficult not to beat ourselves up about, I was feeling jealousy again and can't seem to get rid of it. I'm such a bad person. We really beat ourselves up. I'm telling you, I do. Anyway, I definitely do. And I sometimes go through a few hours and I think, all you've done is told yourself what you're doing wrong. Yeah, what you're doing wrong. You shouldn't have said this, or why are you thinking that? Or the way you think is so negative, or whatever. That's coming up all the time. Maybe you're better practitioners than me, but for me, that's definitely, I beat myself up a lot. So I'm teaching, this is where I should have the picture of me there, teaching myself, we're good people. We have good intentions and we're working hard to eliminate these destructive emotions, yeah? Develop the constructive emotions and stabilize that crazy mind. And so our religion is definitely going to help us. So what are some of the obstacles? Let's go to slide number 5. So some of you, if you've done some work with me before, I can't remember, but maybe you will be aware that I did work on the emotions. Yeah, so here's just some of them. Yeah. And some of these are obstacles to our spiritual development. And so identifying which are positive and which are negative is very much part of our practice and takes a lot of consideration. And they're identified in the 10 non-virtues and are the essence of our vows, not to have hatred or anger, and what these can lead to, and what kind of, speech is kind and loving. Yeah? But sometimes when we're practicing, it's not for real. And this is where it gets tricky, because we're doing the right thing, but inside we're still perhaps suppressing some of the negative feelings that we have, and we don't really know how to work with them. So if we consider the dictionary definition of an emotion, then they all need to go. This is it. Well, English dictionary definition, any agitation or disturbance of mind, feeling, passion, any vehement or excited mental state, whether good or bad. So emotions are destabilizing the mind. So when we're working with destructive and constructive emotions, we start by using the antidote positive emotions on our destructive ones, don't we? We start with that, but then we want to take that further, yeah? So just take up for yourself that we're not suppressing or denying destructive emotions, rather than just being mindful of them. So if, jealousy comes up, for instance, we go, oh, okay, that's jealousy. I know that's not innate within me. I know that actually my Buddha nature is innate, and jealousy is visiting me out of some crazy habit, out of some low self-esteem, out of something I've been feeling maybe in this lifetime and in past lifetimes. But I'm going to practice equanimity or whichever, or compassion, or whichever of these positive emotions is going to rejoice, rejoicing, being happy for somebody. And we know that when we start that, it doesn't feel right. It's through gritted teeth. I feel happy for her, the fact that she looks so goddamn beautiful. Yeah. And then after a while, because your self-esteem is there. And when that happens, after a while, you don't feel jealousy. You don't necessarily feel rejoicing either. It just happens. Somebody beautiful passes you by and you are mindful of it. Yeah. And that's kind of where we're going, why we're going with all this. So just to clarify here why this is this is no different. The spiritual path is developing constructive emotions. But as Buddhist practitioners, we need to take care that that the pretense doesn't become a mask. I'm a nice Buddhist and I don't feel anger. And then, if you're around other Buddhists, them saying to you, oh, are you angry? And then feeling terrible because as a Buddhist, you shouldn't feel it. You shouldn't, that honorable word. So again, as a community, supporting each other. Okay, so they go off crazy. Doesn't mean to say they're a bad person. Don't judge. Yeah. Oh, you'd think after 30 years she wouldn't get angry. Huh, really? So recognizing what we do with each other as well. Okay, let's go to number 6. Now, I wanted to kind of focus on this slide. It's huge because it's going back to what we just looked at. So we're on a spiritual path. We need to be aware of some of the pitfalls. Does religion sometimes trap us in ego games? It's kind of what I've been saying already. So spiritual bypassing is a really interesting term. It was created by Buddhist teacher and psychotherapist John Wellwood. He died in 2019 and he was a student of Trungpa. He was a psychologist and a psychotherapist. You can go online and have a look at all this. And he introduced the term in the mid-1980s because, of course, as a student of Trungpa, he would have been in his own Buddhist community, and as a psychologist and psychotherapist was starting to deal with people who Buddhism in one way was giving to them, but in another way was giving them some other problems. So spiritual bypassing is a tendency to use spiritual practices and ideas to avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished personal development tasks. You can't see those very well, so I've listed them underneath and it goes along the top. So forced optimism, prayer passivity, and we're going to go into these a little bit more. Being a victim of your gifts, psychedelic escape, horoscope dependency, saintly disguise. Just talked about that, haven't I? I'm not angry. Spiritual superiority, identify with that. Over reliance on spiritual guides. We can be trapped into that. Guru glorification, we know that there are problems with that, and finger pointing. Okay. So this is kind of one of the things I want you to take away with you to think about. So I'm going, there's a lot here. You can go, I'm going to leave these, I'm going to send my notes with the slides to Venerable Dondrup, who can make them available, and you can see that you can go onto a certain website and look at it more, because I'm taking from it. This isn't coming from me, but I do relate to some of these. So, for instance, dodging emotional reality. So you ignore emotional pain after a challenging event like a breakup by reciting phrases such as, oh, well, you know, it was our karma, or the universe knows best. Toxic positivity. You keep a positive facade during tough times and deny the presence of any negative emotions or problems. Over spiritualizing. You turn every minor setback into a spiritual test or a karmic lesson. Avoidance of responsibility. You assign blame to karma or destiny for personal mistakes or life situations. You know, in the early days, I definitely could see that the gains of young people falling in love with each other was often, well, I couldn't resist her. We had strong karma together. To excuse, perhaps, taking them from somebody else causing pain or whatever. We're using karma as an excuse. Neglecting personal boundaries. You let others overstep your boundaries under the guise of love and forgiveness. You know, when I've had this with a lot of people, well, you know, I have to have compassion for people, you know, but if they're abusing you or whatever, do you just go, well, this is my karma? We can make big mistakes, and I must have compassion for them and forgive them. At some point, it's like, no, you need to do this, and I need to do this, and you're not doing this to me anymore, because you get caught in a trap, in a cycle of abuse. So it also kind of stunts our growth across different levels of consciousness. It might trap you into a pseudo-enlightened state, dodging the raw realities you need for genuine self-revolution. Quite interesting, isn't it? I wonder what you think about this. So what does it sound like? So it has its own unique language, and it often uses spiritual or positive phrases to mask avoidance or denial. How about don't be so negative? You're pushing positivity onto someone who's feeling bad, making them feel guilty being negative. It's all karma. Done that before. Overlooking personal responsibility or real world issues. Let it go. Oh, that's a good one, isn't it? We hear that in films. Yeah. Letting things go is easier said than done. And it can be a way to avoid dealing with your own emotions or conflicts or other people. Just let it go. Why don't you just let it go? Not helpful, really, is it? And yes, this sort of prayer passivity, I'll pray for you. Now that's great because we do want to be prayed for. We understand the power of prayer. But if it's to avoid actually physically helping you, and then you feel good because you're praying for them, well, that's easy, isn't it, to pray for somebody? Very easy. So yes, what else? Well, I think that's enough. So recognizing these phrases and understanding their impact helps cultivate spiritual intelligence. Yeah. And as a result, it steers you away from using spirituality as a mere veil for avoidance or denial. And I'm sure when you get in your discussion groups, if I don't rattle on too long, which I am, aren't I? 5:48, flipping out. No, yeah, 6:30 we've got, that's okay. Yeah, in your discussion groups, it'll raise some stuff. It'll raise some stuff for you to discuss. Anyway, let's go on to number 7. We're nearly there because this is just, again, this is an image from the book and it's a way of working on your emotions. And I think I've used this as an exercise when maybe online, but definitely at the center. Yeah, you can use the wheel to identify aspects of ourselves that we wish to work on. It's great for journaling as well. And over this week, you can use it, the wheel, for an MOT on your spiritual bypassing if you want to, if you're engaging with this and this makes sense to you. So let's see how we do that. So if we're doing the wheel of spiritual bypassing, then these are my suggestions. Again, I will send them to Dondrop so you can have access to them. You might want to take some notes of them now, as this is going to be part of your discussion. So instead of the emotions, jealousy, hatred, fear, anxiety, you have in one of those little, I'll go back. Okay. So you see you've got 8 little segments there. Yeah. And then what you do is you put forced optimism, prayer passivity, spiritual superiority. Well, I've seen that a lot and I've been that a lot. Self-righteousness and superiority. I know something you don't. Oh my God, if only these people understood emptiness. Yeah, so easy to sort of, instead of kind of going, well, you know, equanimity, all sentient beings, they're teaching me, you know, using all those things within Buddhism that we're given to kind of keep the humility going. And think of the humility of actually our spiritual guides. Amazopa, you know, they all bend so low. The Dalai Lama bends low to his teachers. They're just incredibly humble. So, and then we've got over-reliance on spiritual guides, guru glorification, it's interesting, finger pointing and detachment. Not, I wouldn't say it was so accountable in Mahayana Buddhism because we're also developing compassion, and compassion is so much about working with other people and that interdependence we experience. But sometimes you can feel that non-attachment, you can mistake detachment for non-attachment. Very different. Yeah. So you can do that and just see where you are on it. And finally, oh, I'm going backwards and forwards here. Poor Sheila will wonder what I'm doing. Let's go back to number 7 together, just to see how you can put each of those in. Now we go back to 8, and oh, there we go. And then what you do is you kind of go, oh, that's definitely an 8 for me, or maybe that's 4, maybe that's a 3. So you get that pattern. Can we go back to 7 again, Sheila? You see, you get, a piece of the pie. Somebody's suffering a lot from jealousy there, but also, I can't even see what that says. Judgmental, being judgmental. Not so bad with the pride and the fear. Oh, not low self-esteem, must have good self-esteem. So you just go round and you just do it intuitively. You don't think too much about it, but you use these instead. And then fine on number 8. Sorry, I'm messing you around here. And then finally, your job's done soon. Number 9. This is Thich Nhat Hanh. I'm just going to read through that. Spirituality is not religion. It is a path for us to generate happiness, understanding, and love so we can live deeply each moment of our life. Having a spiritual dimension in our lives does not mean escaping life or dwelling in a place of bliss outside this world, but discovering ways to handle life's difficulties and generate peace, joy, and happiness right where we are on this beautiful planet. So the Dalai Lama and Thich Nhat Hanh, hand in hand there. Okay, so that's it. Let's let go of the slideshow for the moment. How am I doing for time? Okay, so you've got, you have 15 minutes for discussion groups. Sheila and Michael, can you get people into, what do you think, 3s or 4s? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Maybe 4s. Oh, okay, Sheila, you know best. You do it. Yeah. Get them into, okay. And let's just be clear what you're discussing. I'm hoping you can remember some of those spiritual bypassing descriptions. Is that okay with you? Yeah. And just discuss. I mean, I bet you've got your own experience of them. Yeah. And look at this idea of developing spiritual qualities on whether religion can get in the way. And that's actually what we're talking about. We're saying that being a religious practitioner, you can spiritually bypass some of these issues, yeah, some of these ways of being. Are you all okay with this? Do you understand what I'm getting at? Good, great. Okay, that's fantastic. So it's 5 to 6. So at 10 past 6, we'll all come back together again. Yeah? Enjoy. Thank you. Okay. Well, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what you come up with. So let's just hear from each group. The way I normally do this is to get one spokesperson, if you like, and then just check up nothing's been missed. Yeah. In terms of managing the time. So I'm just going along, the lines here. So I'm looking at William, putting him on the spot here, and just telling the rest of us what your group came up with and who you were discussing with, and then I can just check up with them if there's anything else that needs to be said. Didn't expect that to happen this morning, did you?
No, I was trying to hide, but
There's no hiding place. Okay,
So
William, who were you discussing with?
I was in a group with Shayla, David, and Amanda, who had to leave.
Right.
And we talked a little bit about, well, several topics, but one that spent a little bit more time on maybe was just getting caught up in busyness, being overcommitting to studying and other aspects, to the extent that it becomes more of a busy routine as opposed to really thinking through what what classes or what should I be doing that will benefit me most. But just sort of getting into a mindless routine as opposed to really thinking through what's going to be beneficial. That was one aspect. We talked, other people had a couple of other ideas, and I'll let them speak for themselves. And then one thing that came up was, I don't think we understood the definition for detachment that you had on your table. So anyway, if you have time to cover that, that might be a question.
Okay,
And
that's great.
Shayla or David, do you want to add anything?
Anything to add there, you guys? Where's David? Oh, there he is. No,
For me, it's just, oh, no, sorry. For me, there were just a lot of items on your list that hit home, that I've either identified prior and gone, oh, geez, knock that off. That's ridiculous. Or, or, okay, next on the list to work.
Good. Well, that's helpful. I'm glad that's helpful. Yeah, the busyness, I guess, it certainly in our tradition of Gelugpa Tibetan Buddhism, it's study. There's a lot to study, yeah, and so it's quite a different approach from some other types of Buddhism group, organizations. They practice perhaps meditation, or they do all their retreats on purification, etc. Well, ours is very much study, yeah. And I guess if we're in a situation where we're lay people and we've got jobs and families, then fitting the study in to a degree where we feel we're doing it justice and it's serving us is indeed something to be, considered and meditated on, because Lama Tsongkhapa's incredible tradition was created for the monastic community, and that was their life. Every day they were studying, in order to meditate on it. So that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because what can happen, I guess, that it's wonderful to study, but perhaps we're getting a lot of knowledge, but we're not turning that into the wisdom. Yeah. So knowledge is a great thing, but then we're in danger of becoming those people who know a lot, not actually managing to put it into practice, I'm guessing. Yeah. So, yeah, I get that. And the definition, detachment and non-attachment. Well, as I said, in Mahayana Buddhism, we're much more fortunate because we are developing compassion at the same time as our path to realizing emptiness. We're working with interdependence, so we're not getting detached from people. But there has been criticism, if you like, and certainly an experience of some Buddhist practitioners who believe that they're going to cut themselves off from having relationships with anyone. And then that's detachment. It's not non-attachment. because we can have really loving and compassionate relationships with people. Often, for sure, we recognize there's attachment there, but we know also that in those relationships with those people or our houses or whatever, that there is actually emptiness. So we're working with that. Yeah. But you can be a Buddhist practitioner who thinks that non-attachment means not having any interest in other people. Not having any, loving them from afar, but not wanting. I mean, there are some practices in Theravadan traditions which perhaps are fading out now, where, for instance, women were seen as, don't go anywhere near them. We won't even touch. I mean, I've given not this book, but a book to a Theravadan monk who wouldn't take it in their hands because I'd touched it. Yeah, yeah. So, and again, they will have their reasons for that, but that can develop a state of mind which is detached rather than compassionate and practicing non-attachment through understanding the emptiness. Because how we approach it is actually quite complex, isn't it? There are many layers to our practice. Whereas some criticism of Buddhism is there's that, well, they just, they just go around, they don't want to have anything to do with anybody. They think the world is rubbish and other people are getting in their way, and not in a deeply negative way, but in a way of like, they're not engaged. They're not engaged. So I'd certainly used to get some people, who were great Christian practitioners who were in charity work and that. And in the past, there was that criticism of Buddhists don't seem to do anything like that. So some misunderstanding. It's changing. And certainly Thich Nhat Hanh himself brought in huge change with this term engaged Buddhism, where you are involved with helping others. And we don't see it so much in Tibetan Buddhism because it's very much about other people. That was a long explanation. I hope it made sense. Enough. Let's move on to the other group. And thank you very much indeed. Lorna, I'm looking at you. You're next to Sheila on my screen. Who were you with and what did you discuss? You need to unmute yourself.
Thought I did, but it didn't engage. I was with Lou and Michael and Samantha and Cho-sang.
Great. Okay.
And we initially talked about sort of religion as becoming a dogma and kind of what that meant to all of us and our experiences with it.
Right.
And around practice and feeling, sort of the pressure of doing the 10,000 mantra and that sort of stuff, and how we can get caught up in losing what that really is all about, and sort of loosening the rules a bit and sort of seeing it in a bigger context.
That's great.
So if anybody else from the group wants to add in, we actually talked about a bunch of different things. Appreciate somebody else jumping in.
Somebody else jump in. That's a good beginning. Thank you, Lorna.
We also talked about, we tried to talk about the victims of gifts, because we weren't too sure what it was. So one part of it was
excuse me while I cough. I'm listening.
Okay, so maybe it had to do with, because of being online and everything's available, jumping into the higher, the second and third, the higher scopes, and forgetting the lower scopes, not falling in the rim, and getting some kind of a feeling of not being grounded and maybe even a sense of pride in where you are without having gone through what you need to actually work with where you are.
Yeah.
And then some mention was there was some mention of trying to back off from the Tibetanism of Tibetan Buddhism, and someone brought up Zen and how that seems to be divorced from local cultures, whereas Tibetan Buddhism seems to be fairly grounded in Tibetan culture, and how to back off from that.
Yeah, it's complex, and that sounds like a very good discussion, and you could probably discuss that. Oh, I'm really being caught here. Oh, that's horrible cough. You could probably go on and on, and that could be a much bigger discussion. And interesting to discuss maybe with your teachers, your Tibetan teachers. Yeah. Now that they're much more integrated into the West as well. Because it was completely natural when they started to teach Westerners that Tibetan culture was very much there. And we took on that Tibetan culture. And it was very difficult to know whether you were kind of returning to your karmic roots, as they say, that I'm used to this, so I'm taking it on, or whether you were just really getting into the whole wearing all the blessing strings and and looking the part. I am a Buddhist practitioner, so it's something to be aware of, very mindful of, I think. Thank you. That was a very good point. Anything else? Sorry, Lorna, go on.
Oh, so I was just going to say, it just made me think. I read the 2 volumes of Big Love on
Oh, yes.
which is fantastic. And
Yeah.
but all the way through it, I can remember Lama Yeshe always reminding his students that you're not Tibetans. That's not the point of this. And
Exactly.
he always made a point of bringing that up, that this isn't about being Tibetan. You're not Tibetans.
Yes.
You're Americans or whatever, wherever you are from. And we're talking about Buddhism.
Absolutely.
Made me think
Yes.
of that.
And look what he has returned as.
That's right. Which
He's
he actually
definitely
sort of
not Tibetan.
prophesied as well. Maybe I'll come back as a beautiful Italian boy, right? And I mean, Spanish boy, and there he was, right?
Yeah, a fine example he's teaching us, because I know there's a lot of us older students going, that's not Lama Yeshe. It's really cutting through, our expectations, definitely. Yeah, and our attachments to what makes a teacher. Oh, this gorgeous, asexual kind of being who is perfect and spiritual. Wow, cut straight through that. Yeah, very interesting. Let's go on to the last group, which is, I don't know who I'm got, Bobby.
Yeah, I think it
Must
was
be
just
your group.
Bobby. Yeah, Bobby and I we were just
Bobby and you.
just the 2 of us. And we did spend some time catching up. But one thing that came up, was that these issues are not black and white. That when you're working with these, like, with karma and with prayer, like these are, some examples where there are ways in which you do need to bring it in a helpful way and understand, the power. And we're even encouraged, like you were talking about with karma, there's ways of working with that, in terms of, seeing things as, what you want more of, what you want less of, how to make adjustments, and, but also then not, as you were saying, not blaming your own maybe, behaviors, and then saying, oh, well, I was powerless to end up here, you know,
Mm.
you know, even though it was sort of your own choices. And then it's like that inevitability that you were talking about. And then with prayer too, like not discounting it, but also not always thinking that that is sufficient, and that how none of these, working with these, are like all of one or all of the other, but you have to sort of, find, Bobby was saying, find the middle ground, and, not going too far, but also just not going far enough, was something that we talked about.
That's
It was
great, because we
helpful.
don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that's the phrase, isn't it? And perhaps that's a good way to end. Have we listened to all groups now? I'm conscious of the time, and Venerable Dondrup sums that up. Was there anything you wanted to add, Bobby?
Um, I think he said it, but I'll just say it again, that all of these things that are too much that we do, there's also the not doing enough, and that it's the middle ground that I need to, look at. And Danny was in the group and then had to leave, and
Oh yes,
she
that's who we miss you.
basically, no, that's okay. She basically kind of said the same thing. And I also just find, and I didn't say this to you, Venerable, but in my own practice, because I've moved, I don't have a center anymore. I used to be at TNL, and now I'm, halfway across the country. And my practice has really changed. My practice has turned to a much more functional practice of trying to apply what I already know to the real world. And I live in a big city, I live in a city, and there's plenty of places to practice. In fact, once I go out the door, I'm practicing. I can stay at home and not practice, and then I go out and really just operating, not unlike Thich Nhat Hanh in some ways, in just being kind, just trying to find a way to be kind to the guy who's laying on the street, to the grocery store clerk. I mean, just to people that, my radar says, oh, don't go near them. But, the white lady, the stiff-shirted Republicans, just that we all have a commonality. And that's what my practice has morphed into. But it also contains all of these possibilities. I can be spiritual, or I can have a spiritual bypass, and somewhere in between is the place that I want to find myself. I've already resigned myself to many lifetimes of having to get this, so I'm not in a hurry anymore. We're not monks,
Sorry.
We're not monks.
No.
We're not monks. We are people who have full lives, and then we're adding the potential to be monks on top of it. And I finally got over it.
Yeah.
And said, well, I may have to come back 1 or 2 more times. Thank you.
Just 1 or 2, that's all.
Yeah.
That's not many. Well, that's very interesting. I'm glad you got the opportunity to discuss that. As I said, I will pass on the slideshow with notes to Venerable Dondrup if anybody wants to have a look at that in more detail and go over it. And I will see you next week for a continuation of looking at this topic, more of applying mindfulness in our everyday life, which is also, one of the main topics of the book, how to just use mindfulness, as the basis for everything, because we are building that relationship with our intuition, our inner refuge, and the ego, making that as strong as we possibly can, which is going to support us. Yeah, so thank you so much. We can say the prayers. Hopefully I won't cough my way through it, but thank you so much for hosting as well. Okay, no problem. Beautiful prayers. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain, to dispel the miseries of the world. That's okay,
Pulled up
Sheila.
the wrong one.
No, that's okay. That's fine. We're all in our hearts are praying for Rinpoche to reappear as soon as possible and to come and help us. Help, 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 please, Rinpoche. Don't leave us. So you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing hopefully all of you again next week without the cough.
Thank you, Ondy.